My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account to fund her affair, and then sued me for half the house I've owned since I was 20. Now I'm losing everything over her lies and betrayal. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I always believed in the idea of loyalty, of sticking things out through thick and thin. But that belief was shattered in the worst way possible. It all started with small signs, little things that I brushed off at first. Sarah, my wife, had been acting a little distant, more irritable and secretive about her phone. She'd hide her screen when I walked into the room, and I caught her deleting messages more than once. Still, I told myself she was stressed at work, maybe just tired. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then came the weekend. I started noticing her phone bill. She'd been texting someone late at night, and the messages weren't just casual. They were flirtatious, filled with innuendos and emojis that made my stomach turn. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, feeling this cold knot tighten in my chest. I knew I had to dig deeper, so I started looking through her emails and social media accounts. That's when I saw the pictures, flirty selfies with a guy named Mark, her boss at the firm. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, who used to be so sweet and caring, was sneaking around behind my back with her boss. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The betrayal cut so deep it was hard to breathe. I didn't want to believe it at first, so I kept digging. It didn't take long to find out that she'd been meeting him in secret, late nights at hotels, dinners after work, even weekends away. All the while claiming she was working late or going out with friends. But her bank statements told a different story. I found charges for hotels, dinners, and even a few suspicious cash withdrawals. And then I saw the worst. A transfer of $250, $0 from our joint account to an account under her name. That was the moment I knew everything had changed forever. She had stolen our savings, money we'd worked so hard for to fund her affair. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? I felt a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and utter betrayal. I remember confronting her that night, demanding answers. Her reaction was classic: denial, then anger, then tears. She told me I was overreacting, that it was just sex, that Mark was so much better than me. She said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. But I had the proof. I saw her with my own eyes. I had the bank statements, the messages. There was no denying it anymore. That moment changed everything. I started questioning everything about our marriage, about her. How many times had she lied? How many nights had she been with him, pretending to be home? The trust was shattered beyond repair. And yet I was still holding on, trying to process what I'd just discovered. I felt like I was living someone else's nightmare. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had become a stranger. And I knew I couldn't go back to pretending everything was fine. The truth was out, and it was uglier than I'd ever imagined. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and my mind kept racing with questions I didn't have answers for. The betrayal hit harder than I ever thought possible. She sat there, crying, saying she was sorry, that it was just sex, that Mark was just a fling, that she didn't mean to hurt me. But her words felt hollow. Sorry didn't fix the fact that she'd stolen nearly $250,000 from our joint account, money I'd saved since I was 20, working my ass off in that crappy job I hated. That money was supposed to be for our future, our retirement, maybe a house for our kids someday. Now it was gone, just like that. I remember feeling this intense mixture of rage and helplessness. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? I asked her how long she'd been doing this, and she shrugged, brushing it off like it was nothing. She told me she was just lonely, that Mark made her feel alive again, and she blamed me for not paying enough attention to her. That was a lie, of course. I was working overtime trying to keep us afloat, trying to give us a good life. Meanwhile, she was out screwing her boss and draining our savings. The audacity of her to blame me, to make it seem like I was the problem. The next few days were a blur. I started investigating everything, checking her phone, her emails, her bank statements. I wanted to understand how she managed to keep this secret for so long. That's when I uncovered the full extent of her lies. She'd been telling me she was working late, but she was actually meeting Mark. They'd been sneaking around for months. She even booked trips under the guise of business trips, but I found receipts from hotels and restaurants, all paid with our money. She lied about everything. And the more I looked, the more I realized she had a whole double life. I also discovered she'd been pressuring me to sign a new mortgage on the house, one that would make me liable for more debt, while secretly funneling our money into her affair. She'd been planning this for months. I felt like a fool. How could I have missed all the signs? How could I have trusted her? The woman I thought I knew had turned into a complete stranger, a thief and a liar. And yet part of me still wanted to believe she could change, that maybe there was some way to fix this mess. But deep down, I knew it was over. The trust was gone. The damage was done. I knew I had to do something about the money first. That was my priority, protect what was left of our life savings, even if it meant going to the bank and freezing her accounts. But I also knew I couldn't just walk away without confronting her again. I needed to hear her explain herself one more time, even if I already knew the answer. So I called her that evening, told her I was coming home, and demanded she meet me. When she showed up, she looked defiant, like she was ready to fight. I was furious, but I kept my voice steady. I told her I knew everything, that I had proof, and that I was done pretending she wasn't a liar. Her reaction was infuriating. She told me I was overreacting, that I was crazy, that I had no right to accuse her of anything. She even had the nerve to say I was jealous, that I didn't trust her, that she loved me but needed this escape. She kept spinning her web of lies, trying to make me doubt what I saw with my own eyes, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I wanted her out of the house, that I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to take her to court over the money she stole. She yelled at me, called me controlling, a jealous husband, but I didn't care. I was done being manipulated. That night I felt like I was losing everything, my wife, my savings, my sense of stability. It was the worst betrayal I'd ever experienced. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I knew I had to get out of this, not just for myself, but for whatever dignity I had left. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not after everything. I just hoped I could find a way to rebuild my life, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The days that followed were a nightmare. I went straight to the bank first thing in the morning, froze all her accounts, and put a hold on any large transactions. I knew she'd try to move money again, so I had to act fast. It felt surreal, like I was watching my life crumble right in front of me. That $250, $0 gone, just like that. It was supposed to be our safety net, our future, and now it was a pile of numbers she drained with her lies. I kept thinking about all the things I could done with that money: pay off debts, buy a house, save for our kids. Instead, she used it to fund her affair, to keep Mark happy, to lie to my face. I started digging into her phone records, her emails, everything I could find. I needed to understand how deep this went. That's when I saw the messages she'd been hiding. She'd been texting Mark every chance she got, morning, noon, night. They had a whole secret language, code words, and plans. I found messages where she was telling him she loved him, that she couldn't wait to see him again. She even called him her secret, and that's when I realized this was more than just a fling. She was in love with him, and she was willing to ruin everything, our marriage, our life savings, even her own reputation, just to be with him. I was furious. I wanted to confront her again, but I knew I had to be strategic. I needed proof, and I needed to be careful. I started recording our conversations secretly. I wanted to catch her in her lies, and I did. The more I listened, the angrier I got. She kept spinning stories, saying Mark was just a boss who was helping her at work, that their affair was just sex, that she didn't love him. But the messages told a different story. They were full of intimacy, promises, and plans for a future together. It was obvious she'd fallen for him hard, and I was just the fool who got played. Meanwhile, she kept trying to manipulate me. She'd cry, plead, say she was sorry, that she'd stopped seeing Mark. But I knew better. I had the evidence. I started talking to lawyers, figuring out what my options were. I wasn't interested in just walking away with a broken heart. I wanted justice. I wanted her to be held accountable for stealing from us, for betraying everything we had built. I also discovered she'd been pressuring me to sign a new mortgage, trying to make me responsible for more debt, all while she was secretly funneling money into her secret accounts. The betrayal was complete. One day, I found myself in her office, digging through her files. I uncovered even more lies, fake receipts, fake emails, plans to run away with Mark. It was like peeling an onion, layer after layer of deception. I felt like I was losing my mind. I couldn't believe I married someone so manipulative and selfish. And then I remembered the house, our house, that I'd paid for since I was 20. Now she was suing me for half of it, claiming I had no right because I was controlling and abusive. This woman was so good at spinning her lies she almost convinced me I was the problem. I sat there staring at the court papers, feeling this cold sense of dread. How had it come to this? I'd worked my whole life to build something real, something I thought was ours. And now she was trying to take it all away, using her lies and her charm to manipulate the legal system. I knew I had to fight back. I hired a lawyer, started collecting evidence of her infidelity, her theft, and her lies. I wasn't going to let her walk away with half of everything I'd worked for, especially after she destroyed it with her betrayal. The most shocking part was realizing how much she'd lied, not just to me but to everyone around her. She told her friends she was the victim, that I was controlling, that I was abusive. She painted herself as the innocent wife, while behind my back she was screwing her boss, stealing our money, and planning her escape. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd always thought she was the love of my life. Turns out she was just using me, and I was the fool who believed her lies. But now I was determined to fight, to expose her for who she really was, and to make her pay for what she'd done. By this point, I was completely consumed by a mix of rage, sadness, and a desperate need for justice. I wasn't just fighting over money or a house anymore. I was fighting to reclaim what little dignity I had left. I began documenting everything, screenshots of her texts, copies of bank statements, recordings of her voice when she tried to lie her way out of things. I knew the legal battle ahead wouldn't be easy, especially with her spinning her stories and trying to manipulate the system. But I was determined. One night, I confronted her again. I told her I had enough evidence to destroy her reputation if I wanted to, but I wasn't going to do that. Instead, I told her I was filing for divorce and that she'd have to face the consequences of her actions. Her reaction was classic. She yelled, called me crazy, said I was ruining her life. She even had the nerve to blame me for her actions, saying I was a terrible husband because I didn't pay enough attention to her. That was the moment I realized she'd been gaslighting me all along. She was good at twisting everything around, making me doubt my own perceptions. As I prepared for the legal fight, I found myself spiraling into a deep emotional state. I was devastated, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I started to see her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who had used me as a stepping stone. The woman I thought I loved was nothing but a liar and a thief. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting. Every day was a battle between my heartbreak and my resolve to do right by myself. I also learned that she'd been planning her escape for months. She'd hidden her affair, stolen our savings, and now she was trying to take the house, claiming she deserved half because she was married to me. But I had proof of her betrayal, her messages, her bank transfers, her lies. I filed for full custody of the house and started the process of recovering the stolen money. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for what was mine. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, not just financially but emotionally too. The legal process moved quickly once I got a lawyer involved. She hired her own attorney, and suddenly we were in court. I remember sitting there, feeling like I was in some bad movie. She sat across from me with her bitchy smirk, trying to look innocent, but I saw through her. I had the evidence and I was prepared to use it. During the hearings, she lied again and again, trying to paint herself as the victim. She claimed she was just confused, that Mark was just a fling, that she never meant to hurt me. But her words felt hollow, and I knew the truth would come out. The judge saw through her act, though. The evidence was overwhelming. She'd lied about her whereabouts, forged documents, and manipulated the system to her advantage. The court awarded me full custody of the house, and I managed to recover a significant portion of the stolen money through legal channels. But the process had taken a toll on me. emotionally, financially, and mentally. Still, I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd fought for my life, for my dignity, and I'd won. Not completely, but enough to start rebuilding from the ruins. Looking back, I realize how much this whole experience has changed me. I used to trust blindly, believe in the best in people, but now I see the world differently. I learned that sometimes people are capable of incredible betrayal, and you have to be prepared to fight for yourself. I also learned that revenge isn't just about getting. Even it's about reclaiming your power, standing up for what's right, and not letting anyone take everything from you without consequences. That's the lesson I carry now. Don't be naive, stay vigilant, and never ignore the signs of betrayal, no matter how much you love someone. Because in the end, your survival depends on your ability to see the truth and act on it. The aftermath of everything was a mess, honestly. I managed to get the house back, and I recovered a good portion of the stolen money through legal channels, but it didn't make the pain go away. The house, the money, those were just things. The real damage was inside me, the trust I lost, the way I felt betrayed to my core. Even now, I catch myself looking at her old emails, her texts, trying to convince myself I missed some sign, some warning. But deep down, I know I didn't miss anything. She was good at hiding it, better than I ever thought possible. The divorce was finalized a few months later. She moved out, of course, and I stayed in the house, trying to piece my life back together. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could do something so vile, steal from us, lie so effortlessly, destroy everything we built. It's a question I don't have a good answer for. Maybe she was never really the person I thought she was. Maybe she was just pretending all along. Either way, I had to accept that I was better off without her. The trust was broken, irreparably. But the real shocker came when I started to see the legal fallout from her actions. She lost her job at the firm. Mark was a big enough scandal that her boss had to let her go. That was karma, I guess. But she also filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I was controlling, abusive, and that I was trying to ruin her reputation. She wanted half of everything, half the house, half the savings, everything. She even tried to get a restraining order saying I was harassing her. The courts saw through her lies, of course, but it took months of fighting to clear my name. Through all of this, I learned some hard lessons. First, never ignore the small signs. Second, trust your instincts, even if it's uncomfortable. And third, sometimes the only way to survive betrayal is to fight back hard. I hired the best lawyer I could find, gathered every piece of evidence I had, and made sure she paid for what she'd done. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself and refusing to be a victim. I realized that revenge isn't about ruining her life. It's about making sure she can't do it to anyone else again. Looking back, I can't help but feel a mix of anger and relief. Anger at her for what she did, but relief that I finally see her for who she truly is. I've started rebuilding my life slowly but surely. I've got a new job, new friends, and most importantly, a new perspective. I don't trust blindly anymore, but I do trust myself to handle whatever comes next. I've learned that betrayal can come from someone you love, but it's also an opportunity to grow stronger. If there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's this: don't ignore the signs. When something feels off, pay attention. Don't let guilt or love blind you to the truth. And when you catch someone betraying you, don't hesitate to fight for what's right. You might lose some things along the way, money, comfort, even love. But in the end, you'll find a way to rebuild stronger and wiser. Because the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living in a lie. And your dignity, your life, is worth fighting for. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've changed. I used to believe that love and loyalty were enough to keep a marriage intact. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I loved her enough, she'd never do something so cruel. But I was wrong. Love isn't enough when someone's willing to betray everything you stand for. It's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, one I hope others can avoid if they pay attention to the signs. I also learned that revenge isn't about revenge at all. It's about reclaiming your power. I didn't just want her to pay for stealing our money or lying to me. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences, that she couldn't manipulate her way out of this, that I wouldn't be a victim anymore. I fought hard because I knew I deserved better, and I refused to let her steal my future along with everything else. The experience has made me more cautious, more guarded, but also more resilient. I've come to understand that sometimes life throws you into the fire, and all you can do is come out stronger on the other side. I've learned to trust myself again, to listen to that gut feeling that warned me early on. And I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a flicker of hope. Hope that someday you'll rebuild, you'll move on, and you'll find happiness again. Most importantly, I want to say this. If you're ever in a situation where you suspect betrayal, don't ignore it. Confront it head-on, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Because at the end of the day, your life is your own. No one should take that away from you, no matter how much you love them. The pain of betrayal is real, but so is the strength to overcome it. And trust me, if I can do it, so can you. Life goes on, even after the worst betrayal. And sometimes it's the painful lessons that make us stronger than we ever thought possible.